This is Chili Willie, ECW, everybody's favorite homeboy, the ghetto superstar, and you are watching and listening to Stu's Podcast.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time. Your host, Stu Harmer.
We are back in the good old US of A today for our first ever referee. 118 episodes, and this is the first referee I've had on the show. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy. But we have got our first, and he is a veteran ref of the East Coast in America on the Independents. It's Mr. Vinnie Lax. Vinny has reffed some huge matches. You'll get to hear about him having the Hardys versus Enzo and Cass XL. You will hear about that. That was recently in March, no less, and you will get to see some great photos as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see some great stuff. There's photos of Will Ospreay, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Cody Rhodes and Bobby Fish on a match on the Independents, and he also officiated Bobby Fish's first ever match in wrestling. So, without further ado, my guest for episode 118 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast is the first referee on the show. It's veteran referee from America, Vinnie Lax. Enjoy. My guest today, this morning, where he is in Hudson Valley, USA, is referee, long-time referee, Vinnie Lawrence, my first referee on Stu's Wrestling Podcast. Can you believe it?
I appreciate that, Stu. It's an honor.
I don't know why I
have to do this often.
I don't know why I haven't had a referee on yet, but you are the first.
I appreciate me being the first. I did want to ask you, why me?
Why you?
Why me?
Obviously, I'm in a lot of wrestling groups and stuff, and then I've seen what you do within the business. You know, I've got such a respect for the referee. The referee, in my, you know, the way I view it, is still overlooked, but integral. And it's just I want to get a feel for it. Like you've been doing it for quite some time now, around the Northeast area of America. You know, you've worked for a lot of promotions. So yeah, how did it come about? How did you become a referee?
That's a great story, actually. Because I never expected to get into wrestling. I was a big fan. Obviously, I'm 42. So that, ages me. But so in college was the wrestling boom, right? I was a fan growing up, the whole community area, all that. But when I was in college, right, wrestling had that boom, right? The Rock, Stone Cold, Undertaker, Attitude Era, like everyone watched wrestling in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was a great time for wrestling. And I was a big fan. Like I said, I grew up with it, but like then that college age level, like where it was just everywhere. So big fan of wrestling. I'm in college watching pay-per-views every month. We go to Hooters to watch the pay-per-views every month. It was great. I popped hard when Jericho won the undisputed title when he beat The Rock and Stone Cold that night. Great. So big wrestling fan at the time. So I graduated college and I get my first job as an athletic trainer. So that's for you guys who don't know what athletic trainers do. It's actually Athletic Training Month in the United States right now, or in March. So basically we provide sports medicine, usually to a lot of sports teams, but athletic trainers work in all types of industry. But we're not here to talk about that right now. But that's important because I got my first job working at a high school, working with the sports teams. So one of the coaches there was actually a former professional wrestler. Did some job work for the WWE, but at the time he was promoting a company up in Vermont called Tri-State Wrestling. So that being said, we got talking about wrestling. And one day he goes, "Hey, do you want to come to a show?" And on a whim, I said, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, do you think I could referee?" Just thinking, what could I do on a show? Like, I don't want to be a wrestler. I'm 5'8", like 170 pounds. Like I'm not, and I'm not a very flippy, like athletic kind of guy. So that wasn't going to be a thing for me. So I said, "Yeah, maybe I can referee. You think I could referee?" He goes, "Yeah." Luckily at the time, I got really lucky. A guy by the name of Tony DeVito, who, if there's any ECW fans out there, know he was part of the Baldies. He was running a wrestling school in Newburgh, New York, which is around my area, not too far away, maybe like 45 minutes. And I just started going there and training. So, I trained for a few months before I got on my first show. started refereeing. And I never expected to get to this level. Like I never expected to get where I am right now. I'm not even saying that's a ridiculously high level, but I didn't really expect to ever like do this outside of my friend's company that I worked with. And I trained. Like I said, I got really lucky with the people I trained with. I got to train with some really good. Bobby Fish was actually in that class.
Amazing.
Yeah, I refereed Bobby's first singles match, I think.
Wow,
that's a pretty cool story.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's always been amazing. Honestly, there was that little height limit thing going on in the 2000s with the WWE before they let the smaller wrestlers really shine. But he would have been there a lot earlier if that wasn't the case. But yeah, guys like Cheech and Cloudy were there. Hale Collins, who works for Northeast Wrestling, he was there. He would already trained a little bit at Johnny Rod's. But so I got into a wrestling school basically from my friend and took it from there. And then at the first show I did, there was a guy I went to college with. He was starting to get into independent wrestling. He brought a friend of his who was a referee, saw me work, and was like, "Hey, you did pretty good. How long have you been working?" I said, "That was my first show." He's like, "Oh, I got to get you on some shows." I started working out in Massachusetts, and that's how it just kind of grew and blossomed. And now here I am on a podcast.
How is it? How was it initially? Obviously camera setups and stuff like that. This is what people don't realize. I know more so with the top companies, but I'm sure you've had cameras around you. You've got to be aware of so much stuff. There's so much going on.
Yeah, that's something No,
it's fine. How is that? I'd love to get the psyche of a referee from a referee.
Yeah, that's something I've really worked on for the past 10 years. And obviously, back when I first started, people didn't even really think about, there were tapes maybe, right? There was no commentary. There's a VHS. You would get a VHS tape of a show, and there was usually not any commentary. You really didn't think about it. There was a one camera setup. And when I first started that, and we really didn't think about that. So that's something probably in the past 10 years or so, especially with the boom in the internet.
Absolutely.
And putting things on YouTube and, streaming services and stuff like that. So I guess to answer your question is, there's a lot more technical things involved being a referee, as far as making sure you're staying out of frame, making sure that you're setting up the shots in a way that aren't going to get in the way of the action. Being aware of where the cameras are, not only the hard camera, which is the stationary camera that's set up that faces the ring, but the people who are ringside filming, right? So you got to make sure you're cognizant of where they are, so they just don't have footage of your ass the entire match. You know what I mean? I've gotten that feedback, right? Vin, I was watching back, I was doing some editing, and half the match there your ass was. So. Try to be a little more cognizant of that kind of stuff. So yeah. If you watch, it's funny too, because if you go to a live show, and I don't go to many live shows. I was lucky enough to go to an NXT takeover a few years ago. Somebody got me tickets, so I check it out. But you go to a WWE live show, it's obviously a huge production, right? But if you know what you're looking for, you can see all the people setting up time cues and the referees telling people, okay, they're cutting to a segment. Okay, now you're on now. So that's that's how they kind of communicate the production level of the show.
Obviously, working in the area that you work at, some of the venues you've been to, how are the crowds? Because we know about that region of America, how there's just so much thirst for wrestling up there, always has been. Yeah, how is it with the crowds when you're reffing?
The crowds are amazing, and especially coming back out of the pandemic. People just had such a thirst for professional wrestling, especially at the independent level, because you didn't get that live experience for almost 2 years. So, and you're still seeing it now. We actually had a show yesterday in Waterbury, Connecticut. Main event was the Hardy Boys versus Kaz XL and Enzo, which I was lucky enough to
oh
work
man,
that match.
Amazing!
It was fun, yeah.
And it's fresh. How was that? I've got to segue into that. I've got to ask.
But yeah, about I think over 2,000 people and jammed in a high school gym in Waterbury, Connecticut, and the crowd went. It was just amazing, wild. Some of the biggest pops I ever heard. Anytime Jeff Hardy takes off his shirt, I don't know, people just go crazy for it. He still gets that pop. You know what I mean?
How are the guys with you? How, you know, the guys concerned?
Oh, really well. You know, everyone's especially at that level, like everyone's very professional. They'll talk you through whatever they need you to talk, you know, go through. You know, if they have something specific they want you to do, they'll let you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I'm, you know, friends with these people, but like I have a decent working relationship where they at least recognize me and know who I am at this point. So I think when they see me, I think they know enough that like I know what I'm doing, and like they trust me to do things in their match and to make sure that I'm not going to, you know, screw anything up, I guess. 2,000
people as well, Vinny, for an independent, that's great. That's amazing.
We do. If you don't know the company, Northeast Wrestling, I would highly recommend checking them out. If for any listeners that don't know about us, we're based out of like the Connecticut area in the United States. But yeah, we have streaming services on Pivot Share and the High Spot Wrestling Network. So if you have any of those subscriptions, go check it out. Yeah, I highly recommend the northeastwrestling.com has all those resources. So go check that out. Little plug for my best company there.
Not to say you'd be playing favorites, but what are some of your highlights, that matches that you've refed?
Yeah, that's
over the years.
That's always such a tough question.
I know.
Yeah, there's been so many. One that really comes out to mind is just because it was just pretty special was Jeff Hardy versus Juice and Lager. That's on YouTube actually, so you can go check that one out for free. Get a little taste. But that was just something special. Like those, just, you know, for me being like, I always feel weird saying that, like, you know what we call wrestling the business, right? It's the business. I still feel weird saying, yeah, I'm in the business, because I've never done it full time, right? I've only kind of like done these shows, which are big shows, don't get me wrong, but to say like I'm in the business kind of feels weird because I've never done it full time. I've never worked for a big national company. I always said I'm like business adjacent, which is kind of like my line. But just to like be with the two guys like that, like those guys are legends, like Juice and Lager, like legend, Jeff Hardy, legend, and you know, Jeff was even like really like honored to work with him. So, and you could tell that like when we're in the back going over the match and stuff like that, and just to be part of that is just something special, and that's something I'm never going to forget in wrestling. Some other really cool matches I did, which is actually, there was a rematch last night of it, was JT Dunn, who's an independent wrestler. He's done some stuff. Worked Johnny Morrison or Johnny Bondo or Johnny Impact. I don't know what he's going by nowadays, but that was one of the best. I was actually at a baseball stadium, which are always those fun shows talking about crowds. We do a tour of like the Northeast, like minor league baseball stadiums. And those are always some of the best, most fun shows that we do, because the crowds just always hot for those. And they're always pretty big crowds. Another one venue I'm really happy I got to work was Six Flags Great Adventure, which was like one of my favorite theme parks growing up. So to go back there and be able to work at a theme park was pretty cool.
That's amazing. I know there's going to be countless, but the ones that you can recount at the top of your head, amazing.
Yeah, those are like two of the ones that always stick out in my mind as being two of my favorite. One of the biggest things I actually got, like, you know, you try not to get too starstruck in a ring, you know what I mean? But I do remember one time, and this is because I was a big like 80s wrestling Hulkamania era fan. I got to referee Demolition. This is back in like maybe 09, 2010, something like that. It was a while ago. But I got to referee Demolition, and I remember telling Axe to get back in the ring. And then just in a split second, my mind went, I just told Axe to get back in the ring. Like, how cool. Like, I used to watch these guys growing up. One of my more infamous matches you can find online is, I don't know if you've ever heard about the story about Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Matt Bourne, Doink the Clown.
I don't know. I don't think I have, and I'm normally pretty good. I'm pretty well versed.
This is a pretty famous story where basically they had heat from back in the day. I don't know what happened. The promoter didn't tell them. The promoter didn't know about it. Nobody smartened them up to it, and they put them together in a match. And they got in the ring, and they almost just started legitimately fighting. And here are two guys that I grew up like watching in the WWE again, and they're just literally fighting each other in the ring. And I'm like, God, what are we doing? What's going on? Like, and I had no idea. Like, no one told me anything was going on. Like, they barely talked to each other before the match. And I just thought, these are two professionals. They don't need to talk that much before the match. They know what the finish is going to be, right? Duggan's finish has been the same finish since 1985. So, you can check that match out. There's a lot of stories about that one, but that's one of my more infamous matches. I got to referee Doink the Clown and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, where they got into a shoot fight in the middle of the ring. Yeah.
Matt Bourne, R.I.P. of course, but he was known. He was known for backstage stuff. I've read stuff. There was a lot of altercations over the years. I think one with Brian Blair was quite a famous one where they got into it. Like, so he's a bit. I do think the man was a bit hot-headed, but rest in peace, all the same, isn't it? You know,
a lot of wrestlers are.
Not to like put him in his own thing there with being hostilities, but yeah, man, that's amazing. Now I'm always interested to ask about this, the road miles for yourself, because you know you do a lot of promotions in the northeast area. How do you find that? How's the travel? What sort of mileage are you doing over there? Because in Britain we're relatively small compared to the US. You can get around places.
Britain is probably the size of my state, right? New York State is probably around the size of Great Britain. We can travel up and down it within like probably 7 hours. Yeah. I've been to England a few times, actually. My wife is British. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, right. No, I didn't know that.
She's from, I got to give my wife Claire a shout out. She's from Stoke-on-Trent.
Hey.
Her family lives in Stafford now. So, I've been there.
Not far away from me at all, Vinny. About an hour and 20, an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Very close.
I'll be back soon. So
cool, man. I'm in Wales. I'm in Wales. Like, obviously, you know, we are all British, aren't we? That's cool, man. I'm glad you told me that.
So with me having like an actual day job, I don't do as much traveling as I would like to. Obviously, especially like, you know, people run Friday shows all the time. There's no way I can ever make a show on a Friday that's not, you know, at least only like 2 hours away. So that's always at the way. But during the summers, because I do get summers off, which is a nice gig working in a school. So, you know, I have done a little bit of road traveling, but the farthest I've gone is like Ohio, which is probably like a 6-7 hour drive. But those are the trips where you like make memories, right? It's not always in the ring or in the locker room. Like the best times are probably like the road trips, hanging out with your friends, you know, exploring the Northeast, staying in hotels, you know, all the shenanigans that you can get into, especially when I was younger. You know, I've calmed down a little bit now, you know, I'm in my 40s. So, but yeah, we've had a lot of good times on the road, just, you know, probably stories that I can't tell for legal reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's one of the best parts about wrestling is that brotherhood, right? Because even you meet so many people and everyone in the business that's why we say, you know, brother and sister, because your brothers, your sisters, your family, and everyone in wrestling, no matter how insignificant, how little bit you're working, or like the biggest stars, you're still part of this family that is professional wrestling, and that's why like it's such a great business to get involved in.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I like to ask guys who are in the business from their focal point and what they would do. Say someone wanted to get into refereeing, what would be Vinnie Lawrence's tips? Because you've done it for a number of years, so yeah, perfect. Like, I know a lot of people are trying to get in, especially in the UK as referees specifically. I actually got this question yesterday from a fan.
Funny you say that. And I said, find a reputable wrestling school. That's the first thing you do, is find a reputable wrestling school. Now there are ways, there are people who have gotten into this business. Even I got into it in a little sideways way, like, you know, through a friend. But I still had to go through all the training, right? I had to learn how to bump. I had to learn how to hit the ropes. I learned how to wrestle when I was at wrestling school. Not that I was good at it. I'm not saying that, but I did have to learn how to do all that stuff. So, and that helps you in the ring. It helps you like recognize how to put together a match, where the matches are going. Like I said, you know, there are people out there that basically taught themselves. I don't recommend it. I think it can be dangerous. But it does happen. And as a referee, you don't really need to be as technical as a wrestler does, but still you want to have that background where you're not going to get hurt if you're asked to take a bump or you're asked to do something. And I always say too, if I don't feel comfortable doing it, if anyone doesn't feel comfortable doing something that you get asked, just say I can't. I don't feel comfortable doing it. Especially someone who has a full-time job like me. Getting hurt, on my weekend gig, it's not going to be good for my life. So
that's good, sound advice, man. Advice.
Find a wrestling school. Find someone who's reputable. Find someone who knows what they're doing. You'll know because they'll have people who have come out of there who have at least you'll at least recognize. You know what I mean? Especially like I don't know what the independent scene is like in the UK. I've been over there a few times. I never had the chance to check a show out there. I hear I hear good things. I know like What Culture was running that promotion for a while too. I know a bunch of people were working for that.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're still up or not, but.
They haven't been doing stuff, especially since all the back end. I say the back end of COVID, it's still around, isn't it?
It's still around. We just hit 1 million. You just hit 1 million deaths in the U.S. So yeah, it's definitely still around. It's crazy. People are acting like it's over, but it's not completely. Because the hard part is, but it's
because we got a war. Because we got a war going on. Do you know what I mean?
Now we got another war going on.
It's secondary.
We could turn this into a.
No,
I don't think that's your audience.
No. And I don't pertain to know. I watch the news like everybody else. You get fed what you get fed. What's actually going on, though? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't pertain. I don't pertain to be politically engaged at all, Vinny. I'm not. It's not me at all. But yeah. I think I've got to ask now. You're a big fan. You've been a big fan of pro wrestling. Some favorite matches as a fan. That I've got to ask you that. Have to ask you that.
That's a really good question, actually. And it's a funny thing you say, like, because the longer I've been in pro wrestling, the less I've actually probably watched the current product. And I don't know if that's just me getting older and it's directed towards me anymore. I still like to watch matches. Like I still like if I hear there's a good match, I'll go and check it out. Like AEW, I know puts on like really good matches.
Stellar.
And ever since WWE Network switched to Peacock too, I really haven't checked them out that much. But I'm a big 90s Attitude Era WrestleMania and Hulkamania era guy. So like matches that come to mind were like WrestleMania 5, Hogan Savage, Hogan Savage, even Savage Steamboat, obviously WrestleMania 3 is obviously one of the classic matches. Yeah, I'm not gonna have any like crazy answers here. It's gonna be like the generic best matches of all time type deal. I'm a big Savage guy, obviously, because I keep saying Savage, but Savage Warrior is a really, really good match. It's a bit overrated or underrated, I think, because people don't like the Warrior, because he obviously limited what he could do, but that was the kind of wrestling that I loved back in the day. Like I'm a big like character guy. You don't have to put on a 5-star like technical classic for me to enjoy it. I like the character. That's what drew me into wrestling, is the characters, right? That aspect of it, like a bigger than life, like cartoon characters, like battling each other, like good versus evil, like stuff like that. That's the kind of wrestling that I really love.
I was in attendance for SummerSlam '92, so obviously I got to see Warrior and Savage at that. 6 years old.
That's cool.
6 years old, Vinny. I wish I was a bit older. I remember stuff, but you know how it is when you're younger, man. But
it all goes together.
I went down on the bus to London. It was like 5-6 hours probably to Wembley, the old Wembley Stadium. So. Yep. I can relate, man. I
forgot they worked SummerSlam too.
Oh,
but their WrestleMania match was just something special.
The Warrior was limited, they time limited him, but obviously, like you say, that was Savage. You can't.
Yeah,
I think he gets a lot of unnecessary shit. The Warrior, personally.
I've heard obviously I never met Jim Hellwig, the person. From reading and listening to people, he definitely was a bit of a strange character outside of the ring as well as inside. Definitely had some interesting views on the world, which I think can get you a lot of heat, because it might be rightly so. But yeah, I don't think you can ever take away like the impact that he had on professional wrestling. Like it's there. Like if you want to just talk about him as a professional wrestler, yeah, he wasn't going to put on a 5-star like Dave Meltzer classic, but he always entertained. And that's what wrestling is. Wrestling is entertainment, right? You don't have to go out there and show how technical well you can wrestle. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have 1,000 different suplexes in a match to make it good. You tell a story, you build a character, you build characters, and you put those characters in a ring and you tell a story. Wrestling is like any other form of entertainment. It's a story. It's storytelling. And that's something he did very well.
I was there. I was in attendance for WrestleMania 30, obviously his induction that weekend. And then we were getting our connecting flight to come home on the Tuesday. CNN's on as we're going through the airport. Yep. And there it is. He's passed away. But at the same time, he buried the hatchet with so many people. It was a
very weird timing the way that happened.
Crazy. Yeah. You know, sometimes they say life works in mysterious ways. Well, there's a case of it right there.
This is true.
Absolutely. Now, Vinny, I've got to ask you as well, just who would you like to be in there with as a ref? If I could say like a dream match that you were the referee for, and any era, just like personable to you.
Oh, obviously. Oh, if I could do like a Savage Perfect match, that would be like amazing. Mr. Perfect and Randy Savage, those are probably two of my favorite wrestlers of all time. If I could go back and like work a match that they put together, and they did, that would be a match that had both, right? Amazing characters and technical wrestling. So that would be, yeah, I think that would probably be, if I could do a Mr. Perfect Randy Savage match, that would be top. I would be able to retire. we have a joke amongst the referees, especially at our level. Like you don't actually retire from professional wrestling. You just stop doing it, because you can only retire if you actually made a living doing it.
Right.
But yeah,
that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That's a good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before.
I've got to ask these things. You know, like the 90s. I started watching in 1990. And I love the Attitude Era, don't get me wrong, but I like that era. Late 80s, obviously watching stuff back. The first VHS tape I got was Survivor Series 88, the second annual Survivor Series. So that era, I just can't, it's my favorite. That into the early 90s.
Well, that's what I grew up with, watching it on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Yeah, that was just something that was something special, and that's something that's kind of lost on today, and we always like to be nostalgic for what we grew up with, but that kind of wrestling where you didn't see the names, right? You didn't see the big names on every show. Like it was something special to actually watch those guys get put together and wrestle, right? Because every show you put on a Saturday morning was a mid-level guy versus an enhancement talent. Like Hulk Hogan never wrestled on television. Like that was like an event. Like that was like an amazing thing. And I think that's what they're kind of trying to do with Brock in a way, like using Brock's part-time schedule in a way that make him an attraction, right? Make him something that people want to tune into to watch that show because, oh my God, he's going to be on it, right?
I think that, to be fair, I think that there's a lot of unnecessary crap being garnered towards Reigns and Brock headlining it, but it's the star power, isn't it? They've got the backstory. It's WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania.
People know, and it's the same thing. I remember when Ronda Rousey got in, and people were like, and the hardcore wrestling fans were up in arms, like, who's she ever done? She's never done anything in wrestling. But it doesn't matter. They're there to sell tickets. It's like I said, it's entertainment. They're there to sell tickets. They're there to sell paper. Or we're not pay-per-view buys anymore, but you know what I mean. They're there to get eyeballs on them, and that's who people know. And like that's the thing too. And like growing up in the Hulkamania era, everybody knew who Hulk Hogan was. You could tell anybody on the street who's Hulk Hogan. They would tell you who Hulk Hogan is, right? They could probably tell you, and because of that, they could probably tell you 5 other different wrestlers that he wrestled. You go to the average person on the street and ask who Roman Reigns is, they might recognize the name, but I don't think they're going to know who he is. And that's what wrestling always needs. Wrestling always needs a star. And I think that's one thing that is kind of lacking from the business today, but that's, people know who Brock Lesnar is for the most part. If you ask most people, I think people know who Brock Lesnar is, but when especially the Attitude Era, like everybody knew who Stone Cold Steve Austin is. I think everyone knows who Stone Cold Steve Austin is now, and he's not even he hasn't wrestled in 15 years, right? Like, you had Stone Cold, you had The Rock, you had The Undertaker, you had Mick Foley. These were household names back in the day. I don't think you have that now, and I think that's why wrestling is in the kind of the state that it's in, and it's not in a bad state by any means. Because if you're a wrestling fan, this is probably one of the best times to be a wrestling fan. But that being said, it just doesn't have the eyeballs that it used to have. And plus, it's competing with so much more now too. I
can't be dealing with the moaning and groaning online. I stay away from it. Everyone's an expert.
You're better off.
Everyone's a booker.
That's always been wrestling. That's always been wrestling fans. Even when I was in college and I was a big wrestling fan before I got into wrestling. I was there. I was one of the guys like reading all the message boards, reading like what was there were online forums that I've forgotten about now, but like I was WrestleZone, I think one of them was called. Like you had people like writing blogs about wrestling. People like to give out, right? People like to complain. People like to think I could do better, and it's that fantasy booking aspect of it. But it's the same thing with sports. Like you get sports fans who like you watch a game and you post online like they know better than the head coach of an NFL football team or a soccer team or a basketball team. Like they've been doing this their entire lives. I'm pretty sure they know what they're doing. You might think you had a better idea in hindsight, but when you're there in the moment, you never really know what's going through people's heads. So. But that's social media to a T, though. Isn't
absolutely.
Like to complain, and I've been guilty of it before, and I'm probably might not so much at wrestling, but I'm smart enough now to keep my mouth out of that kind of stuff. But that's what it is. It's human nature, I guess, right? I don't really like to use that term lightly, but it's kind of like it's people do. People like to feel like they know more than the person up there making millions of dollars doing it. So
absolutely,
it is what it is. But that's always been wrestling fans. It's not going to change anytime soon. And that's just how the community kind of fosters itself too, right? And that starts arguments and that starts conversation, that's never a bad thing either. So yeah, I obviously being in wrestling for so long, I'm way out of that kind of sphere, but I do see it online.
Oh, absolutely. It's just one of them. It's just have to. I ignore it now. But Vinny, what shows have you got coming up? I'd love to find out what you got on the schedule coming up. I know you're busy with shows, so yes,
I would love to know too. That's great. That's a good question. Yeah, I would tell you right now. I'm going to do a quick Google search.
Hot off the press.
Yeah, I literally this is the way I schedule myself. I go on the website and see when do we have shows.
I love it.
And then obviously I'll see posts like we got a show coming up. I'm like, okay, I know I need to be free for this time. So if you're in the Northeast area, like my primary promotion is Northeast Wrestling. I do work for a smaller promotion called Pioneer Valley Professional Wrestling, which if you're in the area is in the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts, which is like the North Hampton area. But right now we have April 24th in Danbury, Connecticut. We got Spring Slam coming up. May 7th, we'll be back in beautiful Bethany, Connecticut for Flipping Out. And then the big show that I was talking about earlier at the theme park, Six Flags Great Adventure, is June 18th. So yeah, those are some of my shows coming up that I have scheduled as of now. You can always check out what I'm doing on Twitch at the Referee Vinnie Lax Twitch channel, which is actually I usually stream mornings. So if anyone over in England is available in the afternoon to check out the stream, that would be cool. Because I don't really get that many viewers, which I don't really expect, but it's a fun little thing that I've started doing before I go to the gym. I just hop on Twitch for a little bit, play some games and hang out. I have a YouTube channel called Just Another Guy Talking About Stuff. You can check that out. It's not very wrestling oriented. As of now, I don't think I do have a couple interviews with some other pro wrestling referees that people might want to check out. But other than that, it's just me doing silly YouTube things. I post my Twitch videos on there. I review chicken sandwiches. I eat hot things. I did the hot chip challenge a couple times. I do what the basic YouTube videos do, and it's like I don't know if we were on air when we were talking about this or not, but it's basically something I started doing because of the pandemic, right? I was sitting at home. I didn't have much to do. I was off of work. And I said, I got to do something to fill some of this time. So I started a YouTube channel.
That's cool, man. That's cool. A range of topics.
It's been fun. Like, I'm not going to say I'm not successful by any means, but it's a fun little thing to do, to just get out there and put yourself out there and create some content. And, as a podcast host, you probably kind of feel the same way. Like, it's whether or not you're how successful you are, it's a fun thing to do. Get to meet a lot of people, talk about things, talk about your interests. And that's always entertaining. So
it's cool. Vinny, where can we find you in terms of the socials, just to extend off?
Well, I already said my Twitch, that referee Vinnie Lax.
Yeah.
I got my YouTube channel at Just Another Guy Talking About Stuff. And you can find me at Ref Vinnie Lax on Twitter and Referee Vinnie Lax on Instagram. So yeah, my wrestling name is Vinnie Lax. That goes from me playing lacrosse in high school. I tried playing in college and realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So, but the Lax name stuck, and that was been my wrestling gimmick name, as they say, since. So
perfect. Absolutely perfect. My guest from across the pond in the good old US of A, the first referee to be on Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
It really is an honor. Still, it was pretty cool when you hit me up, and I'm like, and you told me I was the first referee to be on. And I'm like, a little nobody referee from the Northeast of the United States getting interviewed internationally. This is my first international interview. So I've done a few podcasts, but this is definitely my first international one. And just to be asked was an honor. So I do appreciate that very much.
You're far too humble, sir, as well. You're far too humble. I'll tell you that right now. No problem. It is Vinnie Lax, referee. He's got loads going on. And yeah, just an honor to have you on to talk and get the referee's perspective. And obviously just, your life in wrestling, incredible.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
So that was our first referee, the zebra-clad Vinnie Lax, on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Fantastic experiences he's had on the independents in the USA. Some huge matches, as you can see in the graphics on YouTube. Some great matches that he has officiated with some fine, high-standing people within the industry of pro wrestling, who we know from WWE and AEW. Thank you so much to Vinnie for coming on. Amazing. Once again, a big thank you to Chris Dutton for editing the show. A huge thank you to Evade Escape for the intro music and the outro music, as you can hear there, already know, which you can get on all streaming platforms. And a big thank you to Mr. Mike Angus for the show intro as well. And we'll see you very soon for 119.